Here we go. In this video, we are going to be talking about the U.S. military is now in a no-win situation, if you will. They're in a situation that I don't think they thought they'd find themselves in, where they are damned if they do or damned if they don't. Now, many people understand that the United States is in Niger to fight a counter-militant war, if you will. You got to be careful what you say on YouTube. You can't even say the military groups on here anymore. But in this video, I sort of want to give you guys a historical overview and breakdown that this is oddly starting to sound almost like the Vietnam War, which is not a good thing. And so when I start to give you guys the comparisons and the breakdown, you'll start to see how we're getting closer and closer to the United States either having to pack up and go or stay and fight, not because they want to, but because it almost seems like they're going to be forced to, especially when you start to look at the patterns. I mean, in all reality, that's why you have the saying, history repeats itself, right? So first things first, a lot of people have been asking me, well, since the United States and France are allies, but they're also in the organization of NATO, does the United States have to follow what's called Article 5? And to give you guys some context, Article 5 provides that if a NATO ally is the victim of an armed attack, each and every other member of the alliance will consider this act of violence as an armed attack against all members and will take actions it deems necessary to assist the allied attack. So on paper, this seems like, hey, the French, the United States, they are in NATO. So if the French get attacked, that means the United States, they have to help the French out, right? We also have Article 6. An armed attack on any party under Article 5 includes an attack on the territory, forces, vessels, or aircraft on any party. But there is a saving grace and caveat to this that helps countries like the United States or countries operating outside the scope of NATO territories, really outside of Europe. Article 6 states that Article 5 covers only member states' territories in Europe, North America, Turkey, and islands in the Atlantic north of the Tropic of Cancer. So, no. The United States is under no obligation to have to help the French or to work with the French in Niger if the French do go through with an attack on the country, or really all of the African nations within ECOWAS to intervene or really invade the country of Niger. Now, understand this, and a lot of Americans don't realize this. Sorry, I have a bit of lag here. In the Sahel, am I looking okay? Am I a little laggy, or am I okay? In the Sahel region of Africa, the majority of attacks and unfortunate incidents, and I'm being very careful what I say, happen in the Sahel region of Africa. Like, majority throughout the world. So what I mean by that is 43% of any sort in 2022 of any sort of accidents, attacks that ended in a bad day for you, if you catch my drift, it happened in the Sahel, not in the Middle East, not in Syria, not in wherever. It happens in the Sahel. So understand there is a massive collection of bad guys in this region. So that's why the United States wants and has to be there, especially after the attacks that happened in 2001. The mission set changed for the United States and other major superpowers. We bring the fight to you. We will never allow for a small sleeper cell hiding in a cave or hiding in the desert to plan really bad attacks that are going to happen to your country. Let's bring the fight to them. Let's make them worry about localized attacks or localized threats. And so understand the Sahel is massive for the United States to bring the fight to the enemy. But along with that, you also have the French. Now, what this reminds me of is in the Sahel, it's almost like Vietnam. And the aspect of in Sahel, you don't want these militant groups to expand. You don't want coups to happen because coups happen here, coups happen there, more and more expansion of coups. And this is ultimately what really branched into the Vietnam War. Let's go ahead and read this real quick from I always can't say it. Britannica. listen to this, and then you'll start to see how it's really starting to sound like Niger and how the United States really is following this exact same blueprint. At the heart of the conflict was the desire of North Vietnam, which had defeated the French colonial administration of Vietnam in 1954. So as we see right here, we're getting very close to that, where the junta is kicking the French out. They want them out of there. No more French. However, that leaves the biggest superpower there, which is the United States. Luckily, the junta is not really talking about the United States, but keep listening. This was in 1954. Vietnam in 1940 to unify the entire country under a single communist regime modeled after those of the Soviet Union and China. The South Vietnamese government, on the other hand, fought to preserve a Vietnam more closely aligned with the West, and U.S. military advisors present in small numbers throughout the 1950s were introduced on a large scale beginning in 1961. So, in the Sahel, you have sort of the exact same thing, and we'll get into what it was actually called, the mission set. But the United States doesn't have a massive ground force there. When they first went into the Sahel region, you had what are called advisors, really U.S. Special Forces. In fact, you even have, on this website I found some pretty cool Special Forces historical insight. U.S. Army Special Forces Advisors Vietnam. The U.S. Army Special Forces was formed in 1962 to provide advisors that would assist the South Vietnam government in organization, training, equipping, and employing of civilian irregular defenses. Interesting enough, if anyone's ever played the game Call of Duty Black Ops, Black Ops is what was happening before you see here, the actual creation of what's called Special Forces, the Green Berets. So that's kind of where the term Black Ops comes from, where you actually had real underground missions that no one could know about. There's a couple of good documentaries about this, and the training was intense. But again, nonetheless, we're starting to see some weird comparisons here that I hope don't happen, because then the next comparison that I'm starting to look at is that this advisory role was not working. We need a little more oomph in the region. And so in Vietnam, you had a massive, massive, massive air campaign. Nothing that we've ever seen before, even outside of World War II. Just trying to take everyone out that we could, try to pepper them up, because we didn't want to send ground forces there. What are we doing in Niger? I have a $2 donation. Think the U.S. will get involved in Vietnam again? Yes, I actually do. If you go check my recent videos, I just made a video on that before this. I actually do think we are trying to get involved with Vietnam. But thank you for your $2 donation. 100%, we are trying to get involved with Vietnam to stop the expansion of China into the South China Sea. Now, back to this point. Again, thank you. We had this air campaign in Vietnam. We also have I don't want to call it major air campaign, but a direct and tactical air campaign within Niger, Africa. The main focus of these air bases is, of course, drone operations to bring the fight again to neighboring countries. Hey, $5 donation. Thank you so much. I got a bad feeling France will light this fire and the U.S. is going to have to put it out. And that is why I am making this video. I agree with you. If the progression starts happening, what happened in Vietnam, the United States is quite literally in a no-win situation. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't help the French, then you're just sitting there in the middle of a civil war. If you do help the French, hey, I thought you were our friends, get out of the country. You see why this is starting to get really obnoxious here. So again, the main purpose of these drone bases, I don't want to compare it too much to this air campaign, which was essentially big military air campaign over Vietnam. But nonetheless, understand we have special forces assets. Just like in Vietnam, special forces came in. We also have air assets. And not only that, we have the ability to bring in localized troops in the region, like other ECOWAS nations and states, to where they train in Niger. In fact, this is one of the biggest reasons why the junta are so friendly with the United States, is because we brought these assets in on our own dime, the taxpayer dime, to train the junta to fight the common enemy. But now the common enemy has turned into the French. So I want to get into, I've talked about this before, but again, I highly suggest that you go do some research on this, because it's a very underground topic, but this really is the bread and butter of why we're even there. It's because of what happened after those attacks in 2001. In fact, we're about to hit, not the anniversary, but we're hitting the date tomorrow. You can't say the word on YouTube, but you know what I'm talking about. The attacks that happened in 2001. And so go ahead and look up what's called the Pan-Sahel Initiative. There's Wikipedia articles on it. But again, it was to bring the fight and the initiative over to the bad guys. We're not going to let these sleeper cells plan anything anymore because the United States realized, look, a bunch of guys in caves can do a lot of damage, especially if they have millionaires backing them, educated personnel and scientists backing them. A lot of damage can get done. Now, the even worse news for the United States, again, is that the French, they're really barking up a storm here to where the United States is trying to just stay silent. But when you have the world leader of the French president saying, we will deploy troops and we will only listen to the guy you have captured. What I'm talking about is Mohamed Bazoum, who's captured right now by Niger. Him saying all these threats is not good for the United States because what is the United States supposed to do? Just sit there while all this action is happening? Oh, don't worry. Look, the turmoil that's being created, you don't think the U.S. embassy is going to get attacked? You don't think U.S. bases are going to get attacked? We will now have to up our defenses because of threats like this.
At the moment, this military junta is taking hostage the president who was democratically elected. So we condemn it. We call upon President Bazoum being set free, and we do not recognize those who led the coup.
Now, don't get me wrong. The United States is not sitting back here and being like, oh, well, you know, we recognize the coup. No, the United States does not recognize the coup, but the United States does not want to instigate a problem, especially a problem with the French. And again, I am showing you guys this video to show you how things seem eerily close to how Vietnam was started. You have the French being taken over and falling apart. You have the United States there to stop the expansion of a group, meaning militant groups in the Sahel. In Vietnam, it was the expansion of communism. You then have special forces who are operating. You have air campaigns. The next big step, I don't think it's going to happen, but again, this would be the next big step, is that you bring in a bigger air campaign on a big military level, not like CIA Special Forces assets with these drones. Air campaign, because the last thing you want is boots on the ground. Once the boots are in the ground, it changes everything. But again, I don't want to hate on the French too much because the French did welcome us and accept us into the region to also help work together and communicate in the Sahel. But understand, it's starting to look like the same thing as Vietnam, and I hope this doesn't happen. I don't know what the United States is going to do. I think it's best just to keep silent and hopefully ask the French to chill out. Because ultimately, it's going to come down to the French and ECOWAS saying we're not going to do military intervention. The United States already said we don't want military intervention. They never said to do military intervention. The only people barking that are ECOWAS and, of course, the French. Now, I know I sound like a broken record and I keep talking about this, but a lot of people are not covering the story in Niger, how we're getting closer and closer to a legit conflict. Everyone's focusing in Europe. We're focusing in the Middle East. Pay attention to what's happening here because everything relies on the next move between the French and ECOWAS. If they do a military intervention, the U.S. military needs to pull out immediately. Get all assets out of there. If they don't pull out immediately, they're going to be literally caught in the middle of a civil war. And look, what's even more crazy is that the U.S. military trained a lot of these juntas. That's what's also crazy. And I don't think that was ever the intention of the U.S. military being in Niger. It was quite literally to fight in the Sahel region to stop the enemies of the United States and global partners. So yeah, that's what's happening right now. I hope you guys do some research again on what's called the Pan-Sahel Initiative. And I hope you guys, again, are paying attention to this story because I don't think this is a good thing. I think we should have peace, but it looks like we're getting closer and closer to something pretty bad. Nonetheless, I'm going to post this live stream. If you want to go back and watch it, do me a really big favor. Make sure you guys comment on the posted video. It helps me out a lot. I love doing these live streams for you. I pretty much do them every day, sick or not, because I love you guys and we need to be informed. Again, it helps me out a lot. Please comment on the posted video so I can see what you guys have to say. I like to comment back, and we can also push the channel and push some more news stories. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you for the donations. And Vietnam 2.0. I hope not. We'll see you guys later.